Today's guest is Dr. Carol Massay. She's the founder of Unity for Construction. All right, Dr. Massey, thank you. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for the invitation, Tats. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I love your background. 40 years, construction, technology.
Mm.
Um, you've looked at this from many different angles.
Absolutely, very different angles, and it's been interesting. You say 40 years, and a lot has evolved, should I say, in that 40 years, but maybe not as fast as many other industries.
Yeah, I mean, I know just looking at, your recent achievements in terms of a doctorate and, selling a, technology company or speaking on AI or these other, things that you like to sort of push and sort of further. Obviously, you've done a lot of, evolving or I guess, you've kept up.
Well, it's a case of if you don't, you get left behind, and that's the message I've been giving to um, so many large, as we call them, tier one contractors. The way that things are moving. If you don't keep up with it, you will get left behind. And from a construction perspective, it's an industry that we know that we're trying to get over 260,000 skills into the UK over the next few years. And what that brings is there's people that's used to new technology, so there's an expectation that when you get there, the company's up to the latest, mobile, touchscreen, AI capabilities.
Yeah.
So having to, keep up with that is most important. And even from a construction and client side, the client wants better information. They're spending multi-million pounds on these projects. They want to know timely, where's the money going?
Yeah.
And from a contractor's perspective, they want to ensure that they're mitigating risks in a timely manner. And that's where the technology piece is so important. And it's important to keep up to date.
Yeah, I was talking to another guest, and he said it's not necessarily everyone's problem about attracting people to industry, but once they get there and they don't like what they see, they're not going to stay.
Well, yes, it's and it is a challenge, to attract into an industry when you look at, over the centuries when there've been recessions, the construction industry here in the UK and overseas is always the industry that gets hit. And because luxury projects will stop because people haven't got money to buy, so it's always been looked at, it's a risk taking. If you're thinking of starting a family mortgage, people always think, well, I need a job that's going to give me longevity and no risk. However, construction is all around us. There's infrastructure, there's buildings, there's, in the UK, there are so many things that we are behind. There's a housing problem where we need to get people housed. So, whilst it might not seem as an attractive industry to get into, if you get into the right role and you get the right support, it's a industry that you can have a great future. And I always say this. I was on a podcast. I was on an interview with BBC a couple of days. It pays well, right? It really pays well, and there is opportunity to grow. But to your point, to retain, you've got to have the right leaders and structure within your organisation to keep those talent. Because all they'll do if they're not happy, but they like the industry, they'll just go through that revolving door and go somewhere else where their culture may be different at.
Yeah. And you mentioned the technology, the tools they want to use and stuff like
Yeah.
that are
So
readily present and adopted, then that makes that, feeling of belonging, much easier.
absolutely, absolutely. And that's important. We spend, so many hours per day, per week, per year going to work. So it's important that we first and foremost feel a satisfaction, but also feel that you're contributing to, to change as well.
Yeah. Talk me through some of the entrepreneurial experiences you've had.
So, oh wow, that's so there's been a few to think about and talk about. There's a few that I've supported. So when you refer to entrepreneurial, it's in that sense, people think, oh, going off and starting your own business, but you can actually be within an organization and you think, well, I can make a difference if we do something different. So that entrepreneurial, oh, never say it, entrepreneurial mindset can help shape and grow businesses. So one of the things that I was really, really keen was to stop the repetitive work of paperwork coming in from the sites or getting lost. And I was in, and this was many years ago. This is when I was young, and I was like, I hate doing things the same way. There must be a better way. And I had the voice to speak to the MD who I'm still very good friends with. Years on after he's retired. So look, there's a better way of doing this. And at the time, it was using Excel, right? So don't beat me up because we tell people not to use Excel, but it was a way to automate things and getting to use the spreadsheet by using by getting onto a shared folder, by doing information more quickly. The accounts team were getting information much more quickly, and on the back of that, that made a real good improvement for that period of time. But on the back of that, we were in a position where we needed to then look at new technology. And I was at the forefront to say, well, look, I know what needs to be done. Let me go out and look at the technology that's going to help not only improve the process I put in, but then show the site operatives that it's not just people in the back office that can embrace technology. You've got a role too as well. So that was my entrepreneurial mindset from that perspective. And how I now support entrepreneurs is, and it's around the construction industry. It's looking at bringing in new technology and having my 40 years of doing things manually, and having a youngster that's saying, Carol, I can use the latest AI, I can use cloud technology, da, 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 and I can do all what you said you used to do years ago much more easy. And it's then having to impart my history into somebody that's energized and wants to make change. So that's some of the things that I've done and some of the things that I'm doing now, Tats.
Yeah, for sure. And what's it about the construction technology industry that's made you stay all these years?
No 2 days the same. Yeah, no 2 days the same. And um as I said at the outset, the industry has been very, very slow to uptake on technology. But the thing is, what's kept it for me, and I'm an accountant, qualified in background. What made it for me was being able to understand from the ground up down, from down below, know exactly what the processes were, to then be able to say, this process in a system can make it better, and people trust in me. Yeah. And for the best part of 20 years, I went around the UK and overseas implementing best practice for construction businesses. So it could be from the procurement process, it was from the finance process, it was from the guys out on site doing quantity surveying, so the commercial. And what kept me absolutely excited, because each time you go to a big contractor, you think, they know what they're doing. And when you go in and talk, you think, oh my gosh, they've been so busy trying to deliver the works and obviously trying to make a decent margin, which we all know in construction is a challenge. They didn't see that embracing technology could help them much quicker. So that's what's kept me going. And I really liked being involved with in my early years a construction specific technology house that look to address all those different elements of the build process. And that's what excited me. And even now, I get people ring up and say, well, we're trying to change our outdated system. What do you think we should do? And I love to give the support on that. And yeah, it excites me, Tats.
Yeah, I mean, change or facilitating change seems to be something that's a common thread. What advice do you have for people that, are frustrated and want to help make that positive change in the construction industry?
What advice? It's perseverance. So you know, you can't do the same thing or assume what worked yesterday is going to work today, right? And things evolve. And I'll use an example. I got into an Uber 2 days ago, and the lovely Uber driver was trying to do a U-turn, but the black cab in the UK, the drivers wouldn't let him go, and he says, "See, they're not very nice, are they?" And I'm like, "I wonder why." And they said, "Because they've not embraced change." Right? So we're all able to do something, but if you don't keep up with change, you can get obviously left behind. Your business model changes, and then there's impact. So my advice is, and all around you things are changing, from the mobile phones to the way we shop, the way we order, shop, order, even book our flights, on everything. It's all changed. So it's about perseverance, not being afraid of change, but then take it back. If you're in a business and you know something is not working, gather the people, that the stakeholders, and say, well, okay, let's look at what we're doing now. What are the pain points, and how can we address those painful points? Because I believe change happens when you've got a united front. It's no good sometimes one person, I want to do it, I want to do this, and you don't have buy-in. It makes it very difficult sometimes. So,
Yeah.
but perseverance, and be clear on what you want to make change and the reason why you want to make change.
Yeah. And you mentioned, the pain points. Obviously, if you
Yeah.
collect a group of people that have similar or pain related to a similar category, I guess there's some support and motivation that can occur there.
Absolutely. It's about that alignment and that collaborative approach. And sometimes you could, in the construction world, you could be the contractor, and the client's there, and they both think, you're both looking at each other and thinking, why are we every month moaning about the same thing when we know that the same thing could be resolved in a different way, or a more pragmatic way? Let's get together and let's talk about it. So the voice is such an important thing, and people have to, it's confidence. You might have, and I go around speaking around the UK, and you've got youngsters coming up, and they have a bit more sav about them and confidence to say, well, actually, I don't want to do it like that. Why do we have to do it like this?
Yeah.
And that's what you want. You want somebody with a bit of oomph, and thinking, well, what have I got to lose if I suggest the idea and you don't do it? Then
Yeah. Even if it doesn't work,
exactly,
it's not like
nothing
it's gonna be
not.
any worse.
Exactly, Tats, exactly. So, nothing ventured is, if you don't venture it, you won't gain it from a change that maybe it happened. So, and the stakes are high, because we're not talking double big figures for profit margin in the industry. So anything to improve bottom line is always going to be worth people sitting around and listening.
Sure. And that, just from when I was listening just now, is that it sounds like the attitude that, you know, there is a solution, or at least a better situation than you're currently in. So there is an improvement. That attitude that there's always a way of improving it somehow.
Absolutely, there is. I'm a strong believer. There's always a way to make a difference or improve something. That because sometimes people get set in a routine, right? So I'll use a name. It's just, a Betty in accounts. She's used to coming in every day, doing the same thing every day. And you say to Betty, well, actually, you don't have to key those invoices anymore, Betty. But she's like, what do you mean? I've always done it. Oh, actually, Betty, we've got a way of the supplier sending it into the back of the system, and all you need to do, Betty, is actually match those in. And all of a sudden, it's like, oh, okay. But if it's how you communicate
Mm.
that change, that people don't feel, oh my God, technology is going to take over my job. I'm no longer going to be needed. No, no, no. It's actually, um, Betty, we've got other great things that you can be doing, and you can be chasing the guys on site to make sure they're doing other things that they need to be doing. Which is, we know, Betty, you'd be really good at that. Oh.
Awesome. That's great. What are some, I guess, within your career? I mean, what's a common lesson or story you find yourself telling others?
Um, a common story. What
Yeah.
from a personal, what from a people or a leadership, or you know?
Maybe it's a leadership lesson. Maybe it's, a day where you felt that, okay, maybe I can do this at this level, or, you broke through a limiting belief. I'm not sure. Anything that's memorable.
Yeah, oh, well, for me, and we talked about my journey. I climbed up the ranks, didn't do the traditional route, and the opportunity came for me to be a CEO of an ERP construction solution, right? So I was approached, and I was like, "Whoa, what me?" At the time, it was like, "Wow," and it was daunting. Tats, it was absolutely daunting. I was I was a contractor on a project, and I was happy, doing my own contracting, and then the opportunity then came up, and it was what's stopping me from taking that job other than the title said CEO, and I've never been a CEO, and it was well nothing, because everything about that job and I could do it. I was confident that I could do it. So it was like, um, I think it was about what other people, I was mindful of what people would think
Mm.
from a big jump from where I was to have that title. And to be fair, there were some cynics that were making comments on social, but that's life, and people like that. The rest is history. I did it, and yeah, I it's put more confident, well, not more confidence. It's shown me as a person that anything's achievable. And as I've got older, and this is what I say to individuals, what is the worst thing by, even if you can do 70% of what it says on the job description, do it. Do
Yeah.
it. What's the worst gonna happen? Yeah, you
Yeah.
learn the other 30%, at home at night or whatever. Or some people come and haunt you that you've never done, but it's easy to navigate through. Take the opportunity. And from a leadership perspective, I think from a leadership and my experience as a leader, I've always had this open door policy where, any of my team could come in and have this conversation. I knew everything, all of them, and I even knew their partners, and knew exactly about what they wanted in their life. And I would, in meetings, if somebody, and I know they had, they have this expression like they're frustrated, they want to say, oh, I'll call them out. So, no, come on, Joe, if you're in this meeting, come on, contribute. And not in a way that makes them feel intimidated, but to make them feel part of it. Because a number of times that, they've had the idea. So my message is, as a leader, always look at your team and the dynamics of your team. There'll be some that will be quiet, and there'll be some that be, yeah, yeah, I know this, da, da, da. But look at the quiet ones. The quiet ones are the ones that will have the golden nuggets, but just hesitant to actually say it.
Yeah, you brought up a good point, 70%.
Mm.
You're never gonna be you never no one's gonna ever feel like they're 100% of anything. You're not gonna know 100% of everything you need to know, there's too many variables. So, if you've made some progress, you've broken down the task, you understand,
Yeah,
a little, more than half of it, then what's the problem, right? You can will your
exactly.
way.
Makes exactly. It makes it more exciting, right?
That's true.
Oh, that's
Did you always, have that kind of, "Okay, I'm nervous, but I'm gonna do it anyways" attitude?
No, I was, I'm being brutally honest, I was that person that was a quiet person. I was that person that sat there, had the idea in some instances, and I was nervous because in the industry, I was the female, sometimes the only female, and the only female of color in the room. And I had experiences of being the person that could give the message in about a project, somebody talking over or through me or talking to another person that didn't know. So it has been challenging from that perspective. Um, but when you're in that situation, you don't realize at the time until after you then look back and reflect and think, wow. And then you think, how well could I have done this better? Did I cause a problem? But then you think, well, no, actually, it was ignorance. And where I am now, I'm a lot more, look, I'm a lot more confident. I know I know my talent, and what I do share with individuals is your voice may feel to you that it's shaking, but talk through it, because the opportunity is that you're there to talk. You're there. You have your right to be in that room, and you have the right
Yeah.
to contribute. So
So that confidence, did that sort of build up, day by day, week by week over time?
it,
Or was there a moment where you say, you know what, I'm fed up. I am going to do better or do
Yeah,
something.
well, I felt that it was a moment, and I'll tell you this, it was a moment where I was in a on a project, and I was the senior person of that project, orchestrating the implementation, and there was trainers and everything else. And it was the first or second project review meeting, and I remember, sitting there in the meeting, and the senior project coordinator had parachuted in for this meeting, and the client was just talking to him about, the problems on the project, blah blah blah, the delays, everything, and just, what are we going to do? And they were going through, and they were directing the message to him, and he was feeling uncomfortable, and I'm thinking, why didn't they ask me? And I was like, and each time, and I could see that he was getting kind of like agitated. And this is my report. And it got to the point where he turned around and said, "It's time, stop, stop asking me. I'm not here day to day on your project. Carol is." And yeah, it was kind of like a pause in that room. And the client kind of like looked over to me and thinking, oh, right. Now, and then they started asking, and I said, right, okay, this is where we are. And I owned it, because I thought, yeah, I know everything about this project, and you should be asking me. And I think it was from that point, and fair play to the senior project, because he was billing his day charge for that day anyway. But fair play, he stood up for, I don't know everything, a person else that otherwise he could have blagged it. He could have
Mhm.
said, "I'll come back to you. I'll come back to you." But he thought enough was enough. The person in the room was there, and from that point, Tats, that I I was confident in that I knew what I was doing, and understanding the process. But that point just made me even more pumped up. I said, "Yeah, I know my stuff." Yes, anytime I go in the room, I would then coordinate the meeting. I would always come prepared, send the agenda out, and
Mhm.
I would be chairing the meeting
Yes.
rather
Yeah.
than the other way round. So yeah, that was
Yes.
my point. And then that's what I would always then, structure my teams, or, others that are running meetings. If you're going to be the voice at the meeting and you want to get the outcomes and chair the meeting, send the agenda in advance. If anyone wants anything else on it, then bingo.
Whoever creates and sort of coordinates the agenda, I mean, a lot of people say they control the meeting.
Yeah. Yeah, you're gonna get what you're, if you're there for 3 hours, you're gonna get what you want. Because if you don't, fool you. You're owning the you're owning the meeting.
Awesome. A great story, I love
Um,
it. It's just, sometimes it's gradual, but I just love those when you can pinpoint, like, a defining moment where it kinda, like, you're so close, but then that one little thing just,
one
tipped you
little
over the
bit.
edge, right?
And you know what? I mentioned this in another talk that I was doing, because then the question was, have you got a male, or do you know a male ally that stood out for you? And he was. He actually, because he could have, as I said before, he could have just sat there and said nothing and allow the client to keep asking the question. And he could say, um, to follow up if he didn't know, or he could have tried to answer the question, but really badly. But he just thought, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to, set the stall right. And I suppose if we look at that now in hindsight, in terms of a project preparation, roles and responsibility clearly wasn't communicated on who are the role masters on the project.
Yeah. But I mean, the power of just saying, "I don't know,"
Yeah,
is kind of underestimated.
yeah, because you kind of like, if you're a senior person and saying, well, actually, I don't know, and it's somebody lower than you in your team and saying, we'll go to them. That is kudos. I think that's great. That's great respect. And that's how it needs to be.
Yeah.
Sometimes you don't, as a leader, you don't have all the answers. And I always say, and you probably know, you surround yourself with people that have more skills than yourself. If you want to run a business, you get the skills around you on the things that need to be done, but need to be done really well. And you can deal with the stuff that that only you can deal with.
I mean, in business, there's teams and there's, people that you complement and stuff. What type of executive, sort of, or someone complements you the best stylistically?
Compliments in terms of what a role.
Business, role, anything, collaboration, brainstorming, when you're with this type of person or this person, ideas flow or things move quickly. I don't know. Is there any pattern or stuff like that?
Yeah, well, yeah, from a spent most of my days in the tech space. I love a good project manager or a product manager. I just love their eye for detail. Um, and I can sit in a room with um, a product manager and scope out something that we want to do, and you can just when you throw something out and they say something else and you said no, but you haven't thought of that,
You're
I
just
love
building
that.
together.
It's just building together. And we've done, I've got a great you know person, was a real dear friend, and she's still in that role. And we've had some great experience, great go to markets where we've like challenged everyone when they're saying, well, no, can you do that? No. And yeah, it's just, yeah, it's exciting. It's exciting. That's the bit that I actually miss in a roundabout way from what I used to do day to day.
Very cool. Um, I mean, I've asked you a lot of different questions. Is there anything that I haven't asked you, but you wanted to share?
Um, I suppose it's looking at, my journey of, from working in a contractor to then moving into the tech space to where I am now. Because my role now is, I head up a consultancy practice, Unity for Construction. And, I'm a massive advocate for diversity, to bring more women into the industry and make it more equal. As I said earlier, we've got over 260 odd roles that need to be filled. So, looking at my whole career journey in construction to the challenges that we have now, um, my my legacy, I suppose, is going to be, if there's one thing I can do is to shift that dial, to move the number from 15% women on site in construction, to move the 2% that are on tools to maybe double figures or 20 or 30. That's what that's my, that's what I want to do. So just looking at, my journey to where I want to end up, that's my future task. And I'm working on it
Awesome.
endlessly, and I'm getting the great support from the industry as well, and
Awesome.
meeting lovely people like yourself.
Thank you. For those that want to help or connect on that mission, how could they do that?
So if they reach out to my website, which is unityforconstruction.com, or go to info@unityforconstruction.com, my lovely EA Angela will be there to support. But I've got some useful resource on the website as well, Tats.
Perfect. Well, Dr. Massey, thank you so much for sharing wonderful advice and your story.
Thank you so much for having me on. Thank you.